the in-furrow fertilizer block at Pathway Farm, and this is, I believe, our third visit since planting. And today is June 30th, and this was planted just about 40 days ago. We planted on May 20th, and we're starting to see some really interesting things out here as we follow up throughout the season, not just with our starter fertilizers as they are, but also with some of the plant growth regulators and even some of the environmental impacts. We started out really cold and really wet this season, and almost immediately after planting we shut off and we became very hot and very dry. And so we have some sidewall compaction issues to deal with, as well as really just some nutrient uptake issues from lack of water and drought stress here kind of through the middle part of this season. So to start off, we want to take a look at this is an untreated, just nothing on it, no starter fertilizer, actually doing pretty well. We're actually getting down, getting some penetration. We have some minor brace root development, but when we take a look at when we add a 1034-0 starter to the mix, and we can see the added root growth, the addition of a lot more fine root hairs and fibers to pull those nutrients up, and substantially more brace root development here as we get a little bit bigger plant. Again, you know, we've caught up in leaf stage, but we just have a more robust plant where we have a starter fertilizer. One thing that we are starting to see here, as we add more root mass, we're beginning to see more of this mohawking pattern on some of the starter fertilizer stuff, and that is due to the sidewall compaction from going in a little bit cold and a little bit wet. Moving over, when we add Optifine Stretch to the mix, and Optifine Stretch is a plant growth regulator with a plant-derived biostimulant. We saw terrific response early on in the season, and it seems that now things are starting to catch up a little bit, but we are maybe a little bit more robust plant again when we add the Optifine Stretch. We're seeing some added plant diameter or stalk diameter, and we're seeing even more brace root development, early brace root development. That's going to help us out, even especially in some of these shallow soils when we get into some of these western corn belt winds this summer. And again, we're seeing some sidewall compaction that is limiting some of our root mass development down low and laterally. But all in all, we are seeing a marked improvement by adding Optifine Stretch over a 1034-0. Now to compare the 1034-0 again in furrow with Ascend with zinc. So we added a chelated zinc to our Ascend and 1034-0 in furrow. And I think what we're seeing here is just a healthier plant all in all. The zinc is helping with the plant health. It helped early on establish some roots. Even though we can see the evidence, with this, of that sidewall compaction, we're punching through it a lot better. We're seeing more lateral root development. We don't have quite as pronounced this mohawk effect that we have here in the root pattern. And so, you know, a 1034-0, this is really good. We want to see this. It's doing well. It's doing what it's supposed to do. We're just adding a little more early growth and a little more punch by adding that chelated zinc and a plant growth regulator with Ascend. The last one we want to take a look at is a micronutrient blend. And we talk about finding our limiting factors in a cornfield. And we know that water is a limiting factor every year in dryland country. We know that nitrogen is a limiting factor. We can address that pretty readily, whether in the fall or the spring, and we really pay attention to it. What we don't pay attention to enough is micronutrients. And adding a micronutrient blend to a starter fertilizer like a 1034-0, again with the 1034-0, we're seeing decent root mass. When we add a micronutrient blend to that, early on, we added a substantial mass to this early root development, especially up top. There's a substantial difference in the stalk diameter and in plant height as well. Our leaf stage is the same, our development stage is the same on these. We just have a bigger, hardier plant with a much better established root system. I think we found our limiting factors out here, and we know, we knew going into this year based on the soil samples that was going to be micronutrients. But you know, we can take a look and we see this mohawk pattern here again. With the runway, with the micronutrient blend runway, we're seeing brace roots trying to put on fine root fibers. It's doing everything it can to claw its way into the ground. A very healthy plant, very, very impressive. And I've mentioned it a few times, the sidewall compaction that we're dealing with. This is probably the most extreme sidewall compaction that I've ever seen. on a field in this part of the world. We're in Palmyra, Nebraska, and it seems like all of the sidewall smearing that happened during planting really just sort of baked itself in, as we move through this hot and dry summer. But this is, there's more than a few of these out here. This is an untreated check. This is a plant that was not able to punch through that sidewall compaction. And we can see just how flat those roots are. And compare that from the row right next to it. We can see the pattern, but it was able to punch through and add some roots down below. We take a look at overall plant size, plant health, more stalk diameter, better root system with a starter fertilizer, even in rough conditions early on, like sidewall compaction, because of the early wet, cold soils followed by the heat. So lots of good things to see here, and we'll follow up again with Pathway Farm a little bit later in the season and see how we progress into tasseling and grain fill.
He didn't make no banker or no legal charmer. When the law made me, he made a black land farmer.